Hello stars, I'm Luminousz Ztarr. Welcome to the channel. Mwah! Thank you guys and gals so much for your subscription. Thank you for motivating me and inspiring me to keep this channel active. Khalil the lion, a man of many faces. He stalks his quarry with stealth and cunning. What secret binds him to his victims? I just read for you or quoted for you a book entitled The Lion's Game. Please check the description box below for further details. What do you think your narcissist's worst nightmare is? You probably won't believe what it actually is. When you go to your mental health care practitioner, or actually in general, when anyone goes to their mental health care practitioner or their counselor, what's one of the main questions that's often asked? How did that make you feel? You notice how a lot of counselors don't ask you, what do you think about what happened? They often ask you how it made you feel. They also don't tend to ask you, how did that person make you feel? They tend to ask you, how did that make you feel? There's a reason for that. See, mental health is designed to help you balance your mind. Not only that, it helps you to manage your thought patterns. Notice I said thought patterns, because see, thought patterns precede how you feel or what emotions you feel. Thought patterns greatly influence the emotions that we feel, the emotions that we experience. One of the reasons why mental health care practitioners or counselors ask you, how do you feel, is because the thoughts precede how you feel. Your mental health is very important. It actually helps you to manage your relationships. In other words, to get what you want out of the relationship. Having a healthy relationship, being loved, cared for, and being able to express that when it doesn't happen. Mental health is very important to be able to achieve all of that. So when the mental health care practitioner or your counselor asks you, how did that make you feel? One of their main objectives is to see how you tend to feel about things. One of the reasons why counselors ask us that question is because they're trying to see your thought patterns or how you tend to think. Because how a person tends to think usually dictates or influences how they tend to feel about what they are experiencing. So when it comes to the narcissistic codependent relationships, this is very key. This is why journaling is very important, along with going to your mental health care practitioner, along with going to a counselor, someone that's going to help you to manage, they can help you to manage what you are thinking or how you tend to think. Your thought patterns precede how you feel. The thoughts come before the feelings. The thoughts influence the emotions. So if you perceive and think a particular way about your relationship, then that means you're going to tend to feel certain emotions, such as anger, such as sadness. This is why we are in the sunken place a lot more often than we really want to be. So our counselors ask us, how do we feel after we get finished describing to them what we went through with our narcissist or, any of our relationships. I'm sharing this experience with you because I've gone to counselors. I'm not ashamed to say that. But what I've noticed, when I used to journal, one of the things that I've noticed was that tended to be a pattern. Whenever I would describe what I was going through in any of my relationships, the counselor would ask, well, how did that make you feel? They didn't ask me, how did that person make me feel? Or how did they make me feel? They didn't ask what I thought about the experience. They asked me, how did it make me feel? So when we think about our experiences, our thought patterns dictate how we feel. This is what a lot of mental health care practitioners and or counselors, I think they know. And that is, your mental health is important because it helps you to manage how you're feeling. Your thought patterns are related to how you feel. So the way you perceive what's going on in the relationship, so when you're going through all of the shenanigans, when you're experiencing the narcissists and cluster B personality types engaging in all the diabolical tactics, it makes you feel a certain way. So when you perceive it a particular way, that's when your emotions come in. That's when your feelings come in. So when we think about what we're going through, it tends to dictate how we're going to feel about it. Change your thoughts, change your behavior, and your life changes. Okay, so we can't control what the narcissist and cluster B personality is going to do, but we can do is realize that we're the ones that are changing. I just think it's a beautiful thing once it's discovered that your thoughts really dictate your feelings. Okay, so when you perceive the narcissist and cluster B personality type, then that's going to dictate how you feel about them and actually how you feel about the relationship. Not saying that what they're doing is not what they're doing. Let's make this clear, okay? I want to make this very clear. Narcissists and cluster B personality types do tend to pull shenanigans. They do tend to engage in diabolical tactics, all for the narcissist to apply. But again, here's the beauty of it all. When you control your thought patterns, that's how you're going to have control over your emotions. That's emotional discipline. And that is how you checkmate. Now, this is not about beating the narcissists at their own game. I don't want to, misconstrue that. What I'm really saying in this video is that once you find out, once you discover that it is all in the perspective, it's all in the perception. I know some of you have heard of that saying, it's all in the perspective, it's all in the perception, because it is. The thoughts come before the emotions. The emotions never come before the thoughts. Okay, so we got to think about what's going on in the relationship. We got to think about what the narcissist is doing. We got to think about what we're experiencing in the relationship before we actually feel something about it. This is often why narcissists and cluster B personality types like to go into an argument. They're trying to figure out which buttons to push. Okay, which red button is going to get you to become reactionary. You become reactionary because you have lost control of your emotions. You feel all this stuff about the lies, the manipulation, all the cheating. See, you're feeling something about it, but you first think about it. You have to put it in your mind first. So you think and then you feel. Narcissists exploit once you express your emotions. Your emotions are energy in motion. So your emotions, they have to move. You're comprised of energy. I'm comprised of energy. So when we start to think and feel, all of that is energy. So narcissists and cluster B personality types, they often record how you feel, just like your counselor records how you feel. When they ask you that question, how did that make you feel? They often start to record it. They don't talk about what you're thinking because they know that your thinking pattern is what dictates your emotion. Okay, so and I'm not trying to say that I know for certain that all counselors think this and know this. No, I'm not saying that. In general, from my experience, this is what I've discovered. Counselors tend to ask you how you feel because it helps them to know or give them a pretty good snapshot of what your thought patterns tend to be. Not that they can read your mind and they know what you're thinking. No, your thought patterns. How do you tend to think when you're experiencing your relationships, when you're experiencing life? Because this dictates how you tend to feel. If you are in the sunken place a lot, that means you're probably in despondency a lot. You're probably feeling sad a lot. You're probably angry a lot. That comes after you think about what's going on. So narcissists also record how you're feeling. They mimic you. See, then they know which red button to push, and they push it. As soon as you become reactionary, oh, they're like, oh, so I said this, and I'm going to be narcissists will file it away in their mental that you tend to become reactionary when they say this or that, or when they do this or that. They record it, just like your counselor records how you feel when you experience certain things in life. So I want to point out to all of you what the similarities are between counselors in general and your cluster B personality type or your narcissist. And that is, they will record how you feel when you are experiencing what you experience in your relationships. Now, this is also why sometimes when you suggest to your narcissist to go to a counselor like what you're doing, they tend to run stealth or under the radar. This is why the narcissist tends to go stealth, or they go up under the radar when it comes to counselors or the mental health care industry, because they can manipulate the mind like nobody else. See, their issue is emotional. Your issue is mental. Now, I'm not meaning to make it sound like, I'm not trying to call anybody out and saying you're crazy and all that. No, here's my point. When you are trying to make sense out of the crazy making, when you and I try to make sense out of what doesn't, that can make us feel like we're in the twilight zone. That can make us feel like we're slipping a little bit mentally, okay? Because it is crazy. See, with the narcissist and cluster B personality type, they tend to not emotionally regulate. So if you and your narcissist go to a mental healthcare practitioner, that means that the person who goes to a mental healthcare practitioner, they're already strong here. So they know how to manipulate here. Often why they become histrionic, it's still mental. That's why it feels phony when they try to be emotional. You don't have a problem with being emotional. You know how to emotionally regulate. You tend to feel joy, gratitude, and love. Whereas your narcissist, that's where they fail. They don't know how to emotionally regulate. So they go here. So they know how to manipulate from here. They know how to go out into the world and use this to make money, to get material things. Not saying that you don't, but here's the difference here. This is why when you go to a counselor, which is, that's great if that's a part of your support base, but please understand, when you try to get your narcissist to do that, it often fails because their chief issue is emotional, is not mental. See, y'all are on the opposite sides of the same spectrum. So narcissists and cluster B personality types, they usually are in here. When the rest of us, we come from here. We're real, we're authentic. Cluster B personality types, some cluster B personality types and narcissists, they tend to come from here. So they will often function out of fear. They're not authentic. So when you know how to balance what you think with what you feel, that's a game changer. That's checkmate. See, the narcissist and cluster B personality type, they don't know what to do with that. They can't eat from that. But as soon as you become reactionary, that means you're not emotionally disciplined. This doesn't mean you're a bad person. You're feeling sad, you're feeling angry. You got to express what you have experienced or what you're experiencing. See, the narcissist, like your counselor, records when you feel, not when you think. See, the objective is to help you to learn how to, this is a good thing, it is to help you to learn how to manage your emotions, to manage your mentality. That's what mental health care is all about. And I know a lot of you know this. This is why some cluster B personality types and narcissists, they tend to manipulate some counselors, and they are successful, unfortunately. However, this does not always work. But I want you to understand that this is where they often come from. They often come from the mental because they don't know how to emotionally regulate. So when you're going to your counselor for mental health care, that's great. But here's the thing, it doesn't tend to work on your narcissist because they already are strong mentally. See, I'm not saying that they don't have any mental illness or imbalances. What I'm saying is that's not their weakest point. Okay, that's not their weakest suit. Their strongest suit tends to be mental. Okay, so, their weakest link or their weakest suit tends to be their emotional state. Their emotional IQs are pretty low. So they're not going to be able to emotionally manipulate your counselor or to manipulate counselors or mental health care practitioners in general. They're not going to be able to do that. They can do that with you though. Once the cortisol, which is a stress hormone, hits a particular part of our brain, that means the amygdala is going to be overly stimulated. And at the same time, the hippocampus becomes altered. or it deteriorates. Please do your research on cortisol and how it affects the function of the brain. So when we try to make sense out of all this crazy making, because a narcissist tends to come from here, when we see their strongest suit is here, and our strongest suit is here, the heart. All right, and that's not bad. It's not bad when you know how to feel, you know how to have relationships with people, you know how to treat people well. That's a good thing. Celebrate that. However, narcissists and some cluster personality types, they have a hard time with that. So they tend to come from here, you know, when they deal with everybody. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being smart. There's nothing wrong with having some intelligence. There's nothing wrong with sharing information. That's a great thing. But when it comes to narcissists and some cluster personality types, they don't want the connection. That's the difference. So they have to come from here. All right, and they are functioning from fear. This is also, again, why they tend to go stealth and they go up under the radar when it comes to mental health care practitioners. You tend to wear your heart on your sleeve, and the other person can exploit your good character. They can exploit all the wonderful things about you. When you express your emotions, they exploit. So of course, we want to keep on going to our mental health care practitioners. If that is a part of your support base, that's wonderful. If it works, keep doing that, because mental health is important. Emotional health is important. Okay, so mental health care practitioners tend to not be able to really help certain cluster personality types for those reasons alone, because they tend to come from the mental. They emotionally do not know how to regulate. That's their chief issue. So if they were to go to a doctor, that would be their chief issue. That would be their chief complaint, not being able to emotionally regulate. They lack empathy. So when you going through all what you're going through emotionally, that's why they don't tend to be with you. That's why they don't tend to connect with you. That's why they tend to not have any empathy or sympathy for you. They can't seem to relate. There's a lack of resonance. The absolute worst nightmare of your narcissist is that they will end up opening up their hearts while they're losing their mentality. Okay, so they're slowly losing their minds, but their hearts are opening and they're actually feeling and acting like a human being for once. While that's happening, you tend to close your heart to them. Okay, it's not that you become heartless and you become a narcissist. No, no, no. You figure out what their demons are. That's their worst nightmare, is that you see their demons and that you see certain things about him or her. And you find out that whenever you express emotions, they exploit. In other words, they cannot connect with you. So their worst nightmare is that you begin to close your heart to them because you begin to critically think about what's actually going on in the relationship. And again, at the same time, they tend to open their hearts and they're slowly losing their minds. So they are no longer able to pull shenanigans. They're no longer able to manipulate to get what they want, to get the narcissistic supply. That's their worst nightmare. And a lot of us are missing this. So once you realize that giving your heart to them is not wise, it may not even be the smartest thing to do, and it's not healthy because they exploit. As soon as you express, they exploit. Just like your counselor that records how you feel, narcissists and cluster personality types, they make a mental file of how you feel. So they know that's a red button that they can push to continue to get supply from you because you become reactionary. Once you learn how to emotionally discipline yourself, right, it's a game changer because that's reflective of your having control. Again, thoughts precede emotions. Emotions never precede thoughts. And some people may debate that, but you know, yes, the thoughts tend to precede the emotions. So once you get that, again, it's a game changer for you and it's game over for your narcissist because now that's reflective of your having control. And when you have control, they lose control because that means that they have lost supply. And that's a sign that their nightmare is coming true as far as you're concerned, because now you're critically thinking about what's going on in the relationship instead of becoming reactionary. So you're closing your heart to them while still being a loving person. But whereas when it pertains to them, you close your heart and you critically think about what's going on. And then you can emotionally, be more disciplined because you know how to emotionally regulate. But if you're not careful and you start trying to figure out the crazy making as it's going on, that's when mental and emotional imbalance can take place. Tool number 1, discontinue to become emotionally available to your narcissist. Instead, critically think about what's going on in the relationship. Tool number 2, build your support base in order to have a safe place or an emotionally safe place to express what you have been experiencing. Tool number 3, remember your life has purpose. Your narcissist's pain is none of your business, so don't make it any of your business. Stay focused on thriving forward. After all, you've been through a lot. You need to take care of yourself. So whenever you try to, figure out the crazy making as it's happening, again, that's where imbalance can come in. This doesn't make you a bad person. Remember, the narcissist's worst nightmare is that you will start to critically think about what's going on, and you will close your heart, or you will guard your heart. Why is that?